So relationships require effort. We all know that. But if you are not putting the effort into letting him lead, being in your feminine, and creating the kind of energetic and emotional and physical space for his masculinity to then come in and kind of take up that space, there isn't the room energetically for him to step into that leadership. So there needs to be the energetic space for him to step into that leadership. Now, part of that energetic space, right? And this is a very multi-layered topic. Part of that energetic space, I mean, it can look like a million different things, but one of them is you actually having your own boundaries. Boundaries in a relationship and ensuring that you don't lose yourself in a partner. It means that you're not then like energetically hooking onto him, creating that smothering energy where he then feels a lack of space. You don't want that, right? Because when you kind of start to lose yourself in a relationship, it can often show up as like edginess and resentment and bitterness and like basically creating a masculine armor for yourself. When he feels that, because men feel, we need to give men like a bit more credit than what we actually do. When he feels that armor and that edginess and that bitterness, that does not make him want to lead you more, especially depending on how the relationship's been in the past. Like, especially if you're trying to repolarize the relationship, he could very well go into that boy like archetype in a way because he's afraid that he's done something wrong. And then you are the one that has to fix it. He doesn't actually come in to fix it. Obviously, if you're with a masculine man where you're in a polarized relationship, then it can be a completely different situation. But when there is a lack of boundaries in yourself, key thing yourself, because for whatever reason, insecurities, attachment issues, whatever, when there is a lack of discipline for yourself, lack of respect for yourself, I mean, lack of self-worth, list could fucking go on. When there is a lack of boundaries with yourself, it bleeds into the relationship with him. And then it creates a lack of space because of the smothering, right? And the kind of like energetic hooking into him. That lack of space is felt by him, inhibiting him from him to energetically step up and have him lead you, right? So when we are wanting a man to start to step up and lead in our relationship, and when we're wanting to like repolarize things in our relationship, it takes a lot of self discipline. It's kind of a funny thing where if you've been in your masculine forever and you're like, okay, I actually need to really get into my feminine and repolarize the relationship, blah, blah, blah. Like there are some habits that you're going to have to break. And the funny thing is, obviously, is those habits are a masculine thing. So then you have to do, you almost have to then bring in more masculine to break those habits so that you can be in your feminine, right? And that's why I was saying before of like, you knowing that balance between your masculine and your feminine is essential because you can be in a masculine, like a healthy space, and you can be in a feminine in a healthy space, or you could be a masculine in an unhealthy space, feminine in an unhealthy space. You want to be thinking about, okay, like you're going to have to bounce between the two when you're repolarizing the relationship because you need the discipline to repolarize the relationship. And you need the discipline to actually step up and do your part, which is going to require a bit of a masculine energy. But can you have that masculine energy without this like hard hyper masculinity and more the masculine energy of like self-respect, like deep self-respect, if that makes sense. And often a whole part of this whole thing of getting him to lead you is one of the number one reasons why women find it so hard to eventually, let's say, or like in the future, let go and let him lead because in the past they weren't. It's because there is so much bottled up resentment. There's bottled up, you know, shit that he's done that you're holding against him. Like there's stuff under the rug that needs to be cleaned out. When there is a lack of like forgiveness and letting go of past hurt, it inhibits the relationship from feeling the way that you desire it to feel, right? So if you are trying to get your man to lead you, but you are actually testing him all the time, you don't trust him, you are holding on to all these past things that, he quote unquote, he's done. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He's done, and you're not bringing those forth to actually heal. You are cock blocking yourself by holding on to past hurts. Like you're trying to punish him for what? Like what are you actually trying to get out of the situation? You're probably trying to get him to admit like I've done XYZ wrong, but the issue is that so many of us as women these days, which also blocks us from getting a man to lead, is that because of this kind of like overactive, female empowerment movement, which is a good thing, right? But like when it gets too far, like anything, it's a bad thing, is that a lot of women can feel like we're always right, they're always wrong. And this is something that I go into in Embodiment Dating number 2. And one of the ladies in there, she actually wrote a message to me and she said, thank you so much, Monica, for making a program where you're calling us out on our bullshit, because I have realized that I've had such a part to play in the fights and the arguments and the resentment. And I've been blaming him the whole time, but actually it's a lot. It's a lot of it is actually on me. And why this is important to bring up is like when you're on TikTok, when you're on Instagram, whatever, there is so much like blaming on the man. He's a narcissist. He's this, he's the this, he's the this. And I'm like, what is your role to play in not letting him lead? Like, where energetically are you cock blocking yourself from him stepping up and being the man that you desire for him to be? And there's a couple of things. Like, he needs to feel like he's got a purpose, like he's got a passion, he's got to feel important to you. He's got to feel needed. He's got to feel wanted. Like, there's so many components that are very important for a man to feel like a man. And if you're not allowing him or supporting him to obtain and feel and embody those things, as my fiance says, if you're not letting him be him, because I have her, like my program her, he's like, yeah, I'm being him, babe. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot. If you're not allowing him to be quote unquote him, then how can he lead you? Right? Remember that when you're in a relationship, like the two of you are bouncing off each other's energy. And so like relationships take work, because if you are putting out this bad, resentful, energy, then like what is he going to be feeling? And men want safety too. So if he then is feeling that energy in return, it's not creating a space where his leadership would actually be received well. And remember, ladies, that in order for him to lead, he needs to be received. So the question for you is, would you actually receive him, or would you not receive him? I always say this, but I'm going to hop on it again. I say this a lot in Be Loved and a Mother. Let him lead. Not get him to lead, not, ask him to lead. No, like let. It's that way of like, I need to let him lead. I need to make space for him to lead. It's about you taking a step back so that he can actually lead. Like, can you receive his leadership or not? Because if you subconsciously don't feel like you could receive his leadership, or you would reject it or self-sabotage it in some kind of way, when we're thinking about the energetics of him leading, right? So we're not asking for him to lead. We're not doing anything like obvious and physical and tangible. This is like an energetic change that's causing him to step up. When we're talking about those kind of energetic things, you need to be looking at your own subconscious, because I'm sure, as you guys know, like your subconscious is ruling vast majority of your behavior, of your thoughts, of your habits, of your patterns. And this is something else to remember. I'm fucking on fire right now. Is when you are in a healthy, safe relationship, or really when you're in a relationship where you know the person loves you, it kind of warrants and allows you to be your worst self. So have any of you guys ever like said something where you're like, why the fuck did I say that? That was so mean. But you just feel like you had to say it. Like you just wanted to be mean, or you just like had to be mean for some reason. The reason why we can do this and why we can be like an effing bitch in our relationship sometimes is because we will be a bitch when we know that somebody won't leave us. That's why people will say often, guys, like, she changed or he changed, because guys can do it too, when we got married or when I put a ring on the finger. It's like, oh, the real her came out, because it's like that level of commitment. It's like, oh, thank God I can be my fullest self and he won't leave. Right. And so what will happen sometimes is like, even in healthy relationships, we'll be a bitch because we are craving to just be fully expressed. And it's like, we know that we're not going to be left in a way. And so because we're not going to be left, it allows us to just be a bitch. It's like the easiest place to not do work on yourself is your comfort zone. And when you're in this comfortable, keyword comfortable, safe, loving relationship, it's easy to not grow, to not expand because you don't have to, right? You can stay in like a toxic situation and maybe he won't leave, right? And so, and especially when there's a lack of self respect from either you, him, or both, he won't leave if he doesn't respect himself. Or if you don't respect yourself, you won't leave. You'll stay in a toxic situation. And sometimes that is I've been talking to one of my one on one clients about this of like, sometimes the meanest thing to do is stay in a relationship where the other person isn't stepping up because you're like affirming that their shit behavior is accepted. Sometimes the most loving thing for you to do is be like, I love you. And because I love you so much, I'm not tolerating this shitty behavior anymore. And so I'm leaving. That can sometimes be the most loving thing for you to do for someone, right? So coming back to like the energetics of getting him to lead, your subconscious is really, really important to look at in terms of your programming around men, what your perceived expectations are of him, even if they're not true. And then the last one is like, what is in your subconscious from previous situations with him that you haven't worked on, that you haven't healed, that you haven't brought up to him? Because if you are constantly replaying the past, guess what? You're inhibiting your future with him and you're inhibiting his ability to feel like it's safe for him to lead.